I call the hero's journey condensed, which is problem, solution, prize. There's some kind of problem, you have some kind of solution, and then the world gets a prize for implementing your solution. If you can really just think about that, that can be like the basis of your elevator pitch. It can be the basis of your founder story. It can be the basis of a case study that you talk about for a successful customer, a case study that you have. And that just builds your emotional intelligence, builds your empathy. And the more you do that, the more easy it is to imagine what another person might want or might care about or might be interested in. And then your pitching, your sales, your relationship building, all those series of conversations become so much better because you have a better understanding of human nature, really. We would tell each other stories so that we would remember them, because a story engages the listener's emotions. And when the emotions are engaged, the information is remembered. So that's why they do a lot of studies about this. Storytelling is something like 22 times more memorable than a piece of data and a fact. If you really start to understand that arc, and also understand that it's not an arc so much as a circle. Here, then you have a problem, then you go into the solution, you figure out all the solution, but then you kind of come back home at the end. So it's like you go back to your life, but your life is better. Authors rewrite their stories 20, 30 times sometimes, right? You can't just make some slides and then think you're going to tell a great story. It doesn't work like that, especially if you yourself don't know how to tell stories. You start with a quick version of your founder story, what I call the founder story, and then you connect that to the company story. The founder story should be kind of small, just at the beginning, and then the company story should be much longer. So for the founder story, I have another framework, if this is helpful. It's a 3-part story as well. It goes childhood origin, youth awakening, and adult choice. What I like to talk about are the 4 types of audience members. There's visionaries, there's empaths, there's theorists, and there's pragmatists. I like to think the middle and the end should kind of be for empath and visionary. You want to put the emotional stuff at the ends, and then the middle can be kind of a bit more filled with the logic. That's a simple way to say it. You want to start and end with emotion, and you want to back up your emotion with the logic in the middle. He was perfect for me. So he knew my story, and he knew his story, and he knew how the stories fit. And when he communicated he did such a good job of saying, this is where you probably are right now. This is where you want to be. And here's all the steps that we help entrepreneurs like yourself go on to get there. And he just nailed it. And like, it was just, and that's the reason. And I signed up for the course. I completely signed up for the course because I was like, whatever this man just did to me, I need to learn, because it was such good storytelling. And I ended up working with him, and I learned so much. So I think for founders, you really want to know the story of your customers. And that's why talking to your customers so often, as much as you can, especially about emotions, is so important. If you can paint what their reality is like now and understand where they want to go, then all you have to do is paint the picture of how you're going to get them there. And then that's a great sales conversation. And the way to practice this every day is to write, and either do it on Twitter or LinkedIn. And write a small short post on LinkedIn or Twitter or both, whatever you like. I use LinkedIn. I am not on Twitter, but I love LinkedIn. I get so much business from there. And start to get your thoughts down and share them with the world. And as you do that, you get better and shorter and clearer and cleaner. And the distance between what's in your mind and what other people are interpreting gets shorter and shorter and shorter.
So, Will, thanks a lot for joining us. So, what are you up to?
So I'm working with entrepreneurs. I'm a former actor, and I do public speaking, coaching, and storytelling training for entrepreneurs. And I'm kind of in a great place where I have lots of one-on-one clients. And so that's really fun. I get to work with a lot of one-on-ones. I do a lot of work with accelerators as well, like Techstars and DMZ and Google for startups. But I'm kind of in the exciting place of saying, okay, I have some good one-on-one kind of pipeline of clients coming in. How do I expand this? How do I scale this? So that's what I'm working on right now. How do I find the product market fit of a larger course-based cohort model community? I'm looking at all those options and really excited to see kind of how I can do that.
Oh, okay. So we've gone through your post, and recently you mentioned that the founders need to be reading fiction. Okay, so
Yes,
tell me about that.
I really think it's so important to read fiction,
Mhm, mhm,
especially for entrepreneurs, because what is an entrepreneur if not somebody who works with people and gets things
mhm,
done, their connections to other people, right? You can't make anything happen without having conversations with others as an entrepreneur.
mhm,
I know that
mhm,
some technical founders want to imagine that they can just do everything on the laptop and they can, create
mhm,
everything possible. But I don't think it's possible. I think you need conversations. Oh, I'm sorry. My wife is bringing me a coffee. I didn't realize we were starting.
mhm. No,
And
that's it.
that's it. Thanks, baby. And when you have conversations with people, you have to get them excited. You have to get them to buy into the vision. And that comes from an empathy with where they're at in their lives, what
Mhm,
they might want, what they might be interested in, what they might care about. And when you
mhm,
read fiction, you spend time in other people's minds,
mhm,
not just the author, but the characters they create. You read about what it feels like for a little girl in another country whose parents are divorced and maybe her uncle died and she's going through these feelings. And you might not have that experience, but you're reading what the author has written about that
mhm,
experience. And that just
mhm,
builds your emotional intelligence, builds your empathy. And the more you do that, the more easy it is to imagine what another person might want or might care about or might be interested in. And then your pitching, your sales, your relationship building, all those series of conversations become so much better because you have a better understanding of human nature, really.
mhm. Okay, that's awesome. So if somebody was like a huge nonfiction fan and a business book uh, follower and all of that, so where should they start? Like, what are those three your best top books that you really love and you would want to recommend people to read those?
So my favorite author, contemporary
Mhm,
author, is a guy called Jonathan Franzen. And what I love about him is that he writes from so many different main characters. Like there's not one main character in his book. Like each chapter will take a different characters in the story. So you get into the heads of each one, as I was talking about before. So I love that. I love when a book
mhm.
has multiple narrators and main characters. Did you read Game of Thrones, Saad? Did you ever read those ones?
Um, yeah, I watched it.
Yeah, you watched, right. Well, they do the same thing in the books. If you read the books of Game of Thrones,
Mhm,
it's the same thing. Tyrion Lannister will be, we follow him for
mhm,
one chapter, then we follow Daenerys, then we follow Jon Snow, and so you hear what they're thinking about, and then in those chapters, they're talking about the other people, right? So you kind of get all those perspectives. So Jonathan Franzen does that in I think all of his books I've read. He switches up the main character in each chapter, and so that's a really cool thing to do. Um, the
mhm,
other the other book, the one book that I always recommend to people that every time they read it, they're like, that was the best book I've ever read, is
mhm.
Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. It was
Okay.
turned into a movie with Tom Hanks. I think the movie was like, I didn't even see it. I heard it was so bad, so I didn't bother. But the book is phenomenal. And
Mhm,
again, very similar thing, multiple different main characters, but it all ties together, and the form of the book and it like goes across time, and it's amazing. And it's almost like watching a movie, the experience of reading it. And so yeah, it's brilliant.
mhm,
So I would say start with Jonathan Franzen, start with
mhm,
Cloud Atlas.
mhm,
And then I posted a list on
mhm. Okay.
my LinkedIn, so people can check
Mhm,
the link post if you're able to post it on the notes.
mhm,
A bunch of great
mhm,
authors there. Um,
mhm.
I was just reading, if people like science fiction, a lot of tech founders I find that they'll get into science
Yeah.
fiction. So I've been reading Ursula Le Guin, who is
Mhm,
an old school. She was like in the 70s. She wrote science fiction, and I just finished
mhm,
the book. I can't even remember. It was about a guy
mhm.
who, when he dreams, he changes reality. It's a crazy book, but really, really cool. And so I just finished that one. Ursula Le Guin is great.
And what's the name of that particular book?
Oh God. I just
The
finished
Wizard of Earthsea?
Ursula Le Guin, Ursula K. Le Guin, I should say.
Mhm.
And her books are The Lathe of Heaven, The Lathe of Heaven, The Lathe of Heaven, something
The
like that.
Leather.
The
Okay.
ATHE, the Lathe of Heaven.
Mhm, mhm,
Really cool. And then I know that that her other books are like, she has ones that are even more famous. The Left Hand of Darkness is supposed to be amazing,
mhm.
as well as The Dispossessed.
Oh, okay, okay. So you have this love for fiction, and I think you also done some training in acting. So how did sort of like that come about?
I started acting when I was 7 years old
Okay.
in the movie. Yeah.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
my parents were theater artists as well as my older
mhm,
sister. So I went
mhm,
into like family business basically.
mhm,
But at
mhm,
7 years, and at 7, the first movie I auditioned for was this a big American feature film, and I happened to get the part. So it's kicked off this
mhm,
child acting career. And that's what I thought I was going to do for a living. I was like, great, I'm going to go be an actor. I'll move to LA and I'll like, get famous and
mhm,
it's great.
mhm,
And life didn't work out that way.
mhm,
It's my story is like a lot of people's. I had one thing that I wanted to do, and then something really bad happened to me, which was my younger brother passed away, and that changed my whole mind, my whole reality. I kind of shook me off course, and I started to go down a really bad path of like drinking too much and doing drugs and not living
mhm,
properly. And then I lost. I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my life anymore. I don't want to be an actor because it doesn't make me happy. And then I actually became an English teacher in Europe. I started traveling. I went to Spain and Italy, and I taught English in Spain. And then some of
mhm,
those English teachers, some friends from back in Canada, they were like, we should go start our own school in China. Would you want to be a co-founder of this company? I had no idea what a co-founder was. I had no idea what entrepreneurship meant at all. And I just went,
mhm.
okay, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I just said, okay. And then it turned out it was a shit show. I hope I can swear, or if not, I
Yeah, yeah,
okay.
good, perfect.
It
Yeah.
was a show in China. Like, starting a
Mhm,
business for the first time is hard. Starting a business as a Canadian in China for the first time was ridiculously
mhm,
hard. So all sorts of things that went wrong, and we learned all the lessons of like, okay, you
mhm,
know, don't don't be in stealth mode for no reason, because that doesn't, don't
mhm,
tell people what you're doing. Don't just hide it, because just because you think your
mhm,
idea is so cool, don't just hide it. Because I realized later, if we had told more people what we were up to, we would have gotten more opportunities, but we were too much in stealth mode, and that was a problem.
mhm,
The term sheets with your investors, have good shareholders agreements with your co-founders. We didn't have
mhm,
any of that,
mhm,
and it was a nightmare. So we learned like a
mhm,
lot of lessons the hard way of how to do that. So after all that was over, basically it became clear that like the company was kind of not going to go anywhere. And so I came back to Canada, and long story short, I became a public speaking coach. And that's because I
mhm,
realized I could use my acting skills and now my teaching and entrepreneurship, um,
mhm,
that was to help
mhm,
entrepreneurs that are storytellers and public speakers. And I went to theater school while I was
mhm,
studying how to be an actor, and I learned so much
mhm,
about the hero's journey and about the dramatic arc. So we learned about stage performance and storytelling. We did a lot of writing exercises. So I was like, we have got this storytelling thing that I love, and I've got this public on stage, on camera, face-to-face interaction thing from acting. So what if we give these skills to entrepreneurs? And it seems to work really well.
mhm. And so let's just come to this part now. So the founders, so most of those are tech founders, right? Okay, so they are writing code, they're building products. Now they have to pitch to multiple different stakeholders. Like, and why does stories play so important role over there?
First of all, storytelling is one of the oldest things we do as human beings.
Okay.
We would
Mhm,
tell each other stories around the campfire to talk about,
mhm,
oh, there's a lion over there by the mountains, or there's some good fruit
mhm,
like down by the
mhm,
river. We would tell each other stories so that we would remember them, because a story engages the listener's emotions. And when the emotions are
mhm,
engaged, the information is remembered. So
mhm,
that's why they do a lot of studies about this. Storytelling is something like 22 times more memorable than a piece of data, than a fact of some
mhm,
kind.
mhm,
So
mhm,
because of humans' deep connection to
mhm,
story, we remember stories better than we do facts and figures. So you have to pitch your company. Of course, you need to talk about financial projections, and you need to talk about your market size, and you need to talk about your unit economics and all those
mhm,
numbers and those facts and figures. But
mhm,
you have to wrap it up in a story. Otherwise, it just becomes a series of data points, and nobody wants to listen to that, and nobody will remember that. If there's a main character, or let's say a group of main characters, if there's a main arc to what you're talking about, and it's like, we're starting here, and there's all these problems, and we're overcoming these problems, and then one day we're going to get to this amazing world. That's a story. And if you can tell the arc of that story, you can make people really, really get excited about what it is that you're doing. Because, investors are human. They make emotional decisions just as much as anyone does. And their emotions engage. That's what storytelling does.
Yeah, so it seems like you're mentioning about this arc, like this is a hero journey. So is this hero journey the story that the founders have to tell?
Yeah, I like to give a really simplified version of it. There's all sorts of story structure that can work. I like to give just what I call the hero's journey condensed, which is problem, solution, prize. There's some kind of problem, you have some kind of solution, and then the world gets a prize for implementing your solution. If you can really just think about that, that can be like the basis of your elevator pitch. It can be the basis of your founder story. It can be the basis of a case study that you talk about for a successful customer, a case study that you have. And it can be a piece of content. It's just such a great little 3-act structure to anchor your stories. So you basically start with the problem, which is like, here's how the world is now. And we're talking about a particular person or a particular group of people, your market, your target customer. They have this issue. They want to do something, but they can't. They're struggling with doing something. They feel bad about it. It's costing them money, time, stress, anything like that. And what's the problem with that? Why does that suck so much? Why is that awful, right? Why does this a pain that needs killing? And if you set that up properly in Act 1, that's the first third of the story, then you can get to the solution. Act 1 is like in movies and books, Act 1 should be not as big as Act 2. The problem statements should be like 1/3, maybe less, 1/4 of the story. Then the main chunk in the middle is Act 2, the solution, and then everything around the solution. So the solution is not just your product, but it's also how it works. What are the benefits of it? And if you're talking to investors, how is it marketable? How many people need this solution? What are the profit margins to get the solution to market? What's your plan to get it to market? So all those pieces kind of go in the big central half of the story, Act 2 in the solution. And then once you establish that, then you get to Act 3, which is the prize. If all of this is true, what will life be like? For the target market, for you as the founder, for anybody investing in you or anybody coming along for the ride? What will life be like? How will it make the world better? How will it make people happier, safer? And I like to say for the prize, it's got to be something big. It can't just be like, join me to make systems applications 13% faster. That's not a good prize. It's too small. It would be something like join data scientists everywhere actually love going into work, or something like that, something heart-centered. So that's that I like to teach, the problem solution prize. If you really start to understand that arc, and also understand that it's not an arc so much as a circle. Start here, then you have a problem, then you go into the solution, you figure out all the solution, but then you kind of come back home at the end. So it's like you go back to your life, but your life is better. So
so that's like you go back to the Shire, right?
You go back to the Shire. You go back to, or you go back to Harry Potter goes back home to his every book. There's a circle. There's a circle there. Rick and Morty. I don't know if you know the TV show Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
So the writer, he uses this kind of circular story structure. And every episode, they start in the house, they go on some crazy space mission, and then they come back to the house. And it's just that idea that the story is a circle. And so I always say, if you can, at the end of your pitch or the end of your story or whatever, if you can recall what you said at the very beginning, you can close off the story in a very satisfying way by recalling where you started.
Okay, so obviously this is, again, I love this idea, but if somebody who's been a who's read a lot of fiction, who understand all of the story structure will be able to do that. But let's just suppose if there's this data scientist geek going out there. So what should they do? Like they should need to like write it down, rehearse it, and then practice it.
Yes.
Or is this that?
Yeah. Exactly. You have to write it down and you have to rehearse it. That's a lot of times my clients will tell me, "Oh, I'm better when I wing it. I'm better when I just talk." And I say, "You think you are, but that's because you haven't done the real work of writing and rehearsing." Especially at the beginning, when you're just learning these speaking and storytelling skills. If you're winging it every time, you are not giving the best version of the story because you don't know how to do that yet. What you need to do is write it down and edit it a bunch of times until it's really good, until all the words are like tight and you don't have a bunch of extra points that you don't need and you're not using too much jargon and you're able to simplify and see the whole arc of the story. Authors rewrite their stories 20, 30 times sometimes, right? You can't just make some slides and then think you're going to tell a great story. It doesn't work like that, especially if you yourself don't know how to tell stories. There's a great guide that I would recommend to anybody technical watching this, any technical founder. His name is Christopher Chin, and he does public speaking and storytelling skills for data presenters, for data presentations. So he works with a lot of analysts, technical people, but I think his work would probably be really good for technical co-founders as well. I think he's great. I follow him on LinkedIn and I think he does great stuff. And he focuses a lot more on data people, which I don't. I like to generally talk to the CEOs of companies, the kind of face of the company, because part of my work is also about stepping into the role of your personal brand as the head of your company and telling your.
So let's just talk about that then. I think for the personal brand. So what is the story? Is it like the personal story? Is it the company story? Is it like what should any CEO be talking about?
Yeah. I like to say you should start with a quick version of your personal story and then tell the company story. And when I say company story, I don't mean how the company was founded. That to me is your personal story. The company story is what we just talked about, the problem solution prize for the customer. That's the company story. Company story needs to be, what do you do for your target customers? Because when they're hearing about your company in marketing, in sales conversations, in anything like that, they need to see themselves as the main character of the story. If they see you too much as the main character and they don't relate to you, then it doesn't quite work. So if you're pitching to investors, if you're making a sales call as a founder, doing founder-led sales, if you're talking to partners, if you're hiring people and you're telling the story of the company, what I suggest is you start with a quick version of your founder story, what I call the founder story, and then you connect that to the company story. The founder story should be kind of small, just at the beginning, and then the company story should be much longer. So for the founder story, I have another framework, if this is helpful. It's a 3-part story as well. It goes childhood origin, youth awakening, and adult choice.
Okay.
So you remember this when you asked me about my story earlier? My story starts. I was a child actor, and that's what I did. That's what my child like, and it should be something unique. So a lot of founders tell me like, oh, I don't know about my childhood. It was normal. It was boring. And so sometimes what I'll say to them is, well, there has to be something in your childhood that you think is relevant to the work you do now. It's also got to be relevant. Like you don't want to say, I grew up playing video games and now I sell muffins. It's like, it doesn't quite make sense, right? So you want to tell a story of, when I was a kid, I played video games and now I'm a software developer, something that makes sense, later. So for my story, I was an actor. That directly relates to my work now as a public speaking coach. That's a big reason why I do what I do. So I start there. And then my youth awakening is, unfortunately, like in a lot of people's lives, it was a really sad event for me. It was the death of my brother. It's hard to talk about. I don't love talking about it. But it's who I am, and it's a huge part of who I am, why I am the way that I am, and why my life became what it became. So instead of trying to hide it, I don't want to use it for sympathy. I don't want to I don't want to use it to tell a good story. I just want to use it to tell the real story. Like this is what happened to me. And so I struggled with this a long time, not wanting to include it in how I told my story to people, but I realized I'm just not telling the true story. And so the youth awakening for me, unfortunately, was a really traumatic event, which was the loss of my brother. And that sent me down. But then I made a choice as an adult, which was to become first to become a teacher, then an entrepreneur, then a public speaking coach. So that kind of sums it up. So if I was giving it quickly, I would say, you know, as a child, I was an actor. I did film and TV, and I thought I was going to grow up to be an actor. Unfortunately, when I was 17, my brother passed away suddenly. That threw me off course, and I ran away from home to teach English in Spain. Then I joined an English education company in China, and I realized I like teaching, I like entrepreneurship, and I was an actor. So I became a public speaking coach, and I founded OutLoud Speakers School. So what do we do at OutLoud? You know what I mean? So that quick version story just goes at the beginning of the company story, and now you know so much about me and so much about why I do what I do. And you're more than another founder who said, well, I went to Stanford, and then I got my degree, and then I worked at Google, and then I worked at MIT, and now I do this. It's like, okay, impressive, cool, good schools, but I don't know you. I don't know who as a person, or anything about your character, or what you, or whether you even give a shit about this work, right? And it's not that it's wrong. I just think it's a missed opportunity to actually make a human connection with your audience.
Oh, okay, that's awesome. So, so in all of these stories, so there's a personal story, and there's this company story that we're building, and all of that. How do you stitch in the numbers, the stats? Okay. And yeah, so how do you sort of like mix both of those so as to just starts making sense?
Yes. So I should say, with all of my emphasis on storytelling, it might sound a little like woo-woo or emotional or fluffy, right? And I'm sure a lot of people would be rolling their eyes going, okay, but you know, this is a business, it's got to make money, or this is tech, it's got to make sense, the code has to work. Of course. The reason I talk about stories so much is because I think the tech and the entrepreneur VC community is so numbers focused and so practical, like logic focused, that they need some more emotional intelligence. But it can go too far. I've also had clients who have been too emotionally story focused. What I like to talk about are the 4 types of audience members. There's visionaries, there's empaths, there's theorists, and there's pragmatists. Those 4, by the way, this is based off of all sorts of frameworks about the 4 different types of people. There's the DISC model of personality. There's the Jungian quadrant, I think it's called, about, you know, learner's theory that I base some of this on. And then there's the Unani biotypes. There's a lot of things, the 4 humors from the ancient Greeks. There's all these kind of 4 types of people thing that pops up over history. So I just kind of noticed that. I was like, I think it's true. And I studied it a bit, and I was like, I want to make my own version for audience members that has to do with what kind of information makes people buy in. What kind of information makes a different type of person say, oh, I want to listen to this. So in my book, I wrote a whole chapter about this, about an entrepreneur who pitches to 4 different types of investors. The visionary needs a big idea to buy in. They need like a life. This is like a Richard Branson or a you know, a Steve Jobs kind of thing. They need a big idea, like life-changing thing, and that's what makes them excited, what makes them want to buy it. The empath, maybe somebody like Arlene Dickinson from Dragon's Den, who's very, her LinkedIn, she's a very emotionally intelligent, caring, she seems like a really caring woman, and very, you know, focused on the people behind entrepreneurship. She has her own anxiety, you know, so she would be an empath. Then we have the theorists, and these are the numbers people. Like, okay, great, help starving children, I don't give a shit, what's the number, right? That's those kind of people. They need numbers, facts, figures. And then you have the pragmatists who want the how-to. How is this going to work? What is your go-to-market strategy? How are you going to make this happen? What's step 1, 2, and 3 of the product? Like, those are those pragmatists are the people who just need the the kind of, those are like the COOs, or the operations people. Maybe maybe what's his name, Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary. He's probably a pragmatist, and those people often tend to be kind of assholes, So yeah, I'm a mix of a pragmatist and an empath for my own self-diagnosis. So I need the logic, I also need the human story for me to buy it. And different people have different mixes of these, but the best thing to do is cover all of them. And so the way I like to say is to do that is start with the human story, because we're all human beings at the end of the day. Most of us respond to human stories of some kind. Then after you establish the human story, now you can zoom out and get more practical. How many people have this problem? What's the market size? What's the cost? You can start to bring in some of the practical elements, numbers. The market size is this, 72%, this causes 72% project delay because of this problem. $113 million are lost every year due to this human issue, whatever. And throughout the pitch, you can kind of, I like to think the middle and the end should kind of be for empath and visionary. You want to put the emotional stuff at the ends, and then the middle can be kind of a bit more filled with the logic. That's a simple way to say it. You want to start and end with emotion, and you want to back up your emotion with the logic in the middle.
Okay, so this part is where you have the audience. Okay, you have the audience and you're talking to them, but there's a lot of play which happens before finding somebody. Okay, and I think you get maybe many messages a day. So all of the people are sort of like looking for the right buyer, the right prospects, and all of that. So does this kind of play work over there? Does it changes over there? What do you recommend for that particular part?
Yeah, that's what I would call brand storytelling. I can tell you about the best cold LinkedIn sales funnel I was ever put into. I'll tell you about it, and it was it was masterful. It was like I didn't even know what was happening to me. This was also before I had so much experience as an entrepreneur, so I couldn't see the signal. But I got an email from a person who is now a mentor of mine, and it was a little cold LinkedIn, and he went, hey, Will, it looks like we have a couple people in common on LinkedIn. It looks like you're in Toronto. I'm actually Australian, but I fell in love with a Canadian, and so I moved here for love, and I'm trying to expand my network. Would love to connect. And I immediately went, what a cool story. That's awesome. And I said, hey, no worries, man. Like, that's great. That's cool. Welcome to Toronto. Welcome to Canada. That's so awesome that, blah, blah, blah. And then we just kept exchanging information. And then I can't remember, after a while, like very, very not pushy, not pressurized at all. After a couple weeks, maybe, he invited me to like lunch or something. And I was like, I've been talking to this guy for a while. Sure, I'll go to lunch. And it was all kind of like, but he knew exactly what his story was that would be interesting about coming to Canada for love. And he knew what it was about my story as his customer, which was I'm struggling with growth as an entrepreneur, as a service-based entrepreneur, because that was his target market. As a service-based entrepreneur, he could look at my LinkedIn and tell I wasn't doing a very good job marketing myself, but I had potential, and I was doing a good service that people wanted, but I didn't know how to market myself. And so what he was selling was perfect for me. So he knew my story, and he knew his story, and he knew how the stories fit. And when he communicated he did such a good job of saying, this is where you probably are right now. This is where you want to be. And here's all the steps that we help entrepreneurs like yourself go on to get there. And he just nailed it. And like, it was just, and that's the reason. And I signed up for the course. I completely signed up for the course because I was like, whatever this man just did to me, I need to learn, because it was such good storytelling. And I ended up working with him, and I learned so much. Do you know who Daniel Priestley is?
Yeah, many books.
He's Daniel Priestley's co-founder of this company, Dent. And I have to say, they really know their shit in terms of the marketing and the personal branding and stuff. And so, and it was just that perfect example of like, his demonstration, his masterful storytelling hooked me in. And then, I mean, now I consider him a mentor of mine because we worked really, really closely together a lot. And he taught me a lot about business and about storytelling himself and how to use it for sales and marketing. So that's what I would say is you want to really understand your personal story, what people would find interesting about it. And so for him, he just did it in one sentence, right? I'm originally from Australia, moved to Canada for love. That's a whole story, right? One sentence, whole story. And led with the human part, led with the human story when he reached out to me. The other thing was he knew exactly where I was. He was able to paint life for me in a way where I was like, this dude is living in my life. Like he's like right now probably struggling with this, and a lot of our clients have this problem and this problem. And as he was saying it, I was just like, yes, I do have all these problems. And then he was like, and then here's the solution and how it works. And he made it so clear what the solution was. It was like, you know, we do this and it's like 1 year long program and you're going to get one Zoom call and then you get time with me every 2 weeks. And like, it was so, and then you're going to notice more leads and you're going to do that. Like he painted all the picture of the solution. And then he's like, once you go through this, you'll find work is coming into you. You don't have to chase so hard. You don't have to wait for referrals. Like people will come to you for job offers and for speaking gigs and for coaching. So he was able to paint the picture also of the future of the prize. Now they don't call it this structure, but I saw what they were doing and that's, so I call it problem solution prize, but that's what he was doing. It was, so I think for founders, you really want to know the story of your customers. And that's why talking to your customers so often, as much as you can, especially about emotions, is so important. If you can paint what their reality is like now and understand where they want to go, then all you have to do is paint the picture of how you're going to get them there. And then that's a great sales conversation.
Okay, that's awesome. So just tell me, so you've written this, you've written this, you want to go add something?
I was just going to say that covers once you get a sales conversation. If you are cold DMing people on LinkedIn or cold emailing people, it's always good to just think of what's the way to hook somebody, just as like with a personal story or a very quick thing, and don't try to sell too much at the beginning. Storytelling takes time. You know, in a story, you don't just jump into Frodo has the ring, you know, like that wouldn't make any sense. Frodo lives in the Shire. This is what his life is like. So just think about that. Like you don't want to rush storytelling. So as you're telling the story to the customers, as you're developing relationships, like let it take a bit of time.
Okay. So you mentioned that every entrepreneur should be like taking these calls, like they should be on podcast. Why?
Every entrepreneur should be on podcast. Well, like think about what you and I are doing right now. We are thinking about the right questions and answers for a target audience, right?
Yeah.
That's basically like a free exercise of customer research or customer. It's like almost like a meditation on what do our customers need. You are providing great questions to me of like, what should people be doing? Some of these questions I've never really thought of, or I've never even thought about them the way you're saying them. So that's great for me. I'm sharpening my ideas. I'm honing my ideas. So often I'll do a podcast in the morning and I'll have a sales call in the afternoon, and my sales call goes so well because I've just talked about this exact problem on the podcast in the morning. I've literally had a rehearsal for this exact conversation. So that's podcast is, if you're going on the right ones, you're talking about all the problems, solutions, all the issues related to your customer or related to topic. And that is always a good thing. It's always a good thing to practice getting your thoughts and your ideas sharper and cleaner and more accessible, more memorable. And then practicing being nervous. It's nerve-wracking sometimes to be on a podcast. And we get nervous when we talk to people, whether it's on stage, whether it's even a sales call with a one-to-one customer. Sometimes you get a bit nervous and then you don't speak as comfortably and you can't remember what you want to say. You have to go through that a lot to get better. Because this is maybe my, like, I don't know, I've done maybe 7 podcasts in the last month. I was a lot less nervous to do this with you today than I would have been to practice. the more your body goes through that sensation of, okay, it's time to record, it's time to perform, or it's time to speak, or it's time to have a conversation that I really care about. And the more times you do that and realize, oh, it's not that scary, your body just learns to relax a little bit, and the blood stops pumping, so heart stops pumping, the adrenaline settles, and you just can be much more yourself and natural and remember what you want to say. So the podcast is like getting your reps in for public speaking.
Yeah, so you've also mentioned the great stage presence can't save a bad story. So tell us more about the stage presence also. We talked about story. Now let's talk about the stage presence. Do you just go be yourself, or?
Yeah, the end goal is be yourself, but there's a lot of work to be able to do that.
Okay.
So let me ask you, Saad, if I can, like when you step on stage to give a presentation or even in a boardroom or give a pitch, do you feel those nerves, like slightly raised heartbeat? Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. There's a study I like, which I think makes sense to me at least, which is that every single person who did this study, they measured their heart rate. And for every single person, even if they said, I have no stage fright or I don't get any stage fright, all of their heart rate went up when it was time to give a presentation. So it affects all of us, even if we're not aware of it. And when your heart rate is elevated, you just cannot be as focused or calm as you normally are. So that's important to remember. So being yourself sounds easy and not sounds easy, but it sounds simple. And it doesn't sound very like profound or interesting, but it actually is incredibly profound if you can do it while on stage. Who you are at your most comfortable, most confident, but also most excited is who you want to be on stage. I call it your authentic stage presence. You want to search in your life for the version of yourself where you're like engaged, you really want to make a point. Let's say you're a big Marvel movie fan, like you're a Marvel nerd, right? And then one of your friends is arguing that like Peter Parker is a better superhero than Captain America. Now, I don't give a shit. Tell me that. I can say, fine, great. I don't care. But if you're a big Marvel fan, you might have like a shouting contest with your friend over that, right? What do you mean? What do you mean Peter Parker's a better Captain America has the shield? He's like, whatever, you might get really animated, excited, but you're also comfortable, you're confident, you're with your friend. It's kind of a funny, low stakes argument. It's not actually angry. That version of you want to find some kind of flavor of that on stage or on the podcast, like now or whatever. It's like my most free, my most, my least self-conscious, but also my most animated, my most clear, my most passionate. What version of me is that? And that's what you want to bring on stage. What stops us from being that is the idea, most people don't even think about that. They don't even think I should do that on stage. They think I should be professional, serious, and quiet and small. But then the second thing is, once you know that you should be your best self on stage, your best natural self, how do I stop the stage fright? Because stage fright makes us quiet and small and scared. The practical tip is learn to breathe, do breath work. Number one. One of my meditation teachers said something that I never forget. It was like, your breath, you always have your breath. No matter what you're doing, unless you're when you're in life, going about your business, you always can return to your breath. It's always with you. You might not have a stress ball. You might not have your knitting, your hands occupied. You might not be able to start doing yoga, but you always have your breath. So if you train yourself when you start to get stressed to breathe into your belly and breathe out, and just start to do that whenever you feel your adrenaline going, whenever you feel your heartbeat pumping, you train your body to take these deep, calming belly breaths. You start to fight against the panic and fight against the agitation that comes from stage fright. Notice me now. I didn't even do this on purpose, but I'm starting to talk slower. And breathing, right? Because before I was excited and probably nervous. Now when I do this, I'm much more grounded and I'm much more able to think what I want to say My voice is a little deeper, which may be great. And then I can choose to come back up and be more excited or come back down. But I'm not at the mercy of my emotions. My emotions aren't controlling me. And so that's the first strategy, is just practice breath work and practice being able to breathe when you feel nervous. Training yourself when you feel nervous, breathe nose into your belly. The more you train yourself to do this, the more it'll just kick in naturally when you're nervous, and it really, really helps. So that's a physical breath. That's a breath thing. I like to say there's three things. There's breath, there's physicality, and then there's mindset.
Okay.
Breath work is one thing. The physicality is, especially for a lot of tech founders, you should have a physical practice that you do very often that makes your body feel confident.
Okay.
It can be anything. It can be yoga, it can be cycling, it can be swimming, it can be boxing, martial arts of some kind, it can be dance, it can be anything that makes you feel strong, agile, confident in your body. And so a lot of us spend our time hunched over our laptops, right? We're just kind of like this. We're sitting down. We're not connected to the floor. We're not connected to our lower body. We're cut off from thinking about our physicality. And then we try to step on stage to give a pitch. And it's like, how are you supposed to have stage presence? How are you supposed to feel confident? You've been sitting slouched over for fucking 10 hours, right? It's not going to happen. So you need something to counteract that. I like boxing. I like calisthenics, like pull-ups and push-ups and stuff. My own body weight rather than weights, because weights sometimes makes me stiff. I like running. I like yoga. Yoga's great because it also teaches you to kind of be aware of your body and kind of does some of that breath work that we were talking about. Gotta have something, because otherwise you'll never feel comfortable in your body on stage, I think.
Okay. Mentality.
Yeah, and then the mindset, right?
Yeah.
A lot of stage fright is in the mind. So you mentioned, Saad, you have the stage fright. What kind of thoughts come into your mind when you get nervous before going on stage?
I think it's mostly the public reaction, what they're thinking. I'll screw up, something of that sort. Things of that sort.
Yeah. What will they think of me? I'm gonna screw this up. Those kind of thoughts.
Yeah.
Well, I did a course when I was healing from an injury. I wasn't getting better, so I did this course that was about mindfulness and CBT. It was so cool because it helped me so much understand about this mindset, and also we did mindful meditation, which had the breath work and everything. So CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. In CBT, they teach you about anxiety, and depression, how these thoughts come at you and you think they're true, and you treat them as if they're true, and they have a bad effect on your mood and on your feelings and even on your physical body. And so one day they gave us this sheet of paper, and they're like, here's a list of thoughts that all these patients who have anxiety and depression that they say that they have. And I started reading through these thoughts, and I was like, oh my God, it was like reading a mind reader in my own head. It's like, oh, I'm going to screw this up. Oh, I'm a loser. Oh, I'm not good enough to be here. Oh, everybody else is smarter and more confident than me. Oh, I think this person hates me. You know, all these thoughts I have all the time. And reading it on a piece of paper like that, knowing that they came from thousands of other people, was like a fucking lightning bolt to me. I was like, oh my God, these thoughts I thought I was struggling with alone, they're just symptoms of anxiety and depression. And what is stage fright? It's just social anxiety, heightened social anxiety. And so I started realizing that like CBT is such a powerful thing to work against stage fright. And I was like, if it can work for depression, if it can work for anxiety, it should be able to work for stage fright. So I started doing it with my clients, and it had such good results. So basically what it teaches you to do is identify the negative thought and then counter it. So negative thought that you mentioned was, I'm going to screw this up. In CBT, they teach you these kind of labels to give the thought. So it's like, one is a black or white thinking. One is like fortune telling. One is labeling. One is overgeneralization, all these different ones. And it's worth reading through them, but you don't even need the label. You really just have to need the negative thought. Once you have the negative thought and the label, then you have the rational counter thought. And the easiest way to think about this is, if your best friend came to you with this thought, what advice would you give them?
Okay.
If your best friend, Saad, came to you and said, I've got a big presentation, I'm going to screw it up, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say, don't worry, just be yourself, deliver your best, and the world will love you. I mean, right?
Yeah, you're going to be fine.
You're
You're not going to screw up. Or there's a lot of ones I use. Like the one I always tell myself is, every single time you've done this before, the amount you were anxious was not proportional to the way it went.
Yeah.
You were always over anxious and it went great. And we could even, you were really low, you were feeling bad and it went great. Almost every single time. I've almost never had the experience that the anxiety I had matched what happened. Once in a while, I've had some really bad presentations, really bad workshops, something like that. But even afterwards, usually people come up and go, hey, that was great. You know, it's like the audience doesn't know. So you tell your friend all these sorts of things. And as you know, it's easy to tell your friend, but for some reason, we don't know how to talk to ourselves in this way. We don't know how to be gentle and encouraging to ourselves in the way that we know how to be our best friends. So basically, the mindset is just, whenever you have a negative thought, learn to identify it. Oh, I'm having that thought. This is going to be terrible. You're going to humiliate yourself. You don't belong here. You're going to screw up. And you have that thought and you immediately go, hey, wait a second. That's a lie. You're lying to me. My anxiety is lying to me. What is truth? Or at least a better version of reality. And the better version of reality is, sometimes you screw it up. Usually you don't. Even if when you do screw it up, it's not that bad. The worst that can happen is not going to be that bad. So you just start to learn how to counter these thoughts and tell yourself these things. And you realize you just get so good at like having the negative thought, but not letting it overwhelm you so that you start to panic. It's a really powerful tool. There's a great website. There's a great website called positivepsychology.com, and they have lots of CBT tools. I can link it, or if you just Google positive psychology.
Yeah. Positive psychology. Okay, that's awesome. So just one question. So you mentioned that you always know that particular state where you're fighting for your character, or you're fighting for you. So you get into that state. So how do you sort of like use that, some sort of a trigger, to just be in that state in some other conversation? So how can you just bring that state automatically into at the right point, at the right moment?
If I understand your question properly, you're sort of saying like, how do you take this this process of saying like, oh, I'm gonna screw this up. No, it's okay. You're okay. That process. How do you take that into a conversation?
No. So you know that there's a particular state where you're at your almost absolute best. Okay. Right. How do you turn it on automatically? Okay. Like, okay, this is my awesome state, and now I'm going there and going to the state with this particular state.
I feel like it's gotta be natural. You don't want to put it on. That's my opinion.
Okay.
I know some speaking coaches will say you have to develop an alter ego when you're talking, and it's got to be different than you. I disagree. Maybe that works for some people. Maybe it works for them. I know some people say for introverts that can work. Maybe that does. It's just not my method of teaching. My method of teaching is you got to find it inside yourself by asking yourself some questions. So the question is, remind yourself, why do I care about this? If you're an entrepreneur, you started a fucking company about this topic. You had to get the license. You had to buy the domain. You had to copyright the name. You had to incorporate. You had to hire people, or you had to get subcontractors. Every day you wake up and you work on this idea. If you didn't care about it, you wouldn't do that. So you obviously really care about it. So the question is, why? Why do you care about it so much? What is it deep inside you that drives you to do this business? If you can remind yourself of that, I believe you can find the passion to turn it on, right? Because in your natural life, if you have that authentic, excited, happy, version of yourself that we talked about, it's usually based off passion, right? As I said, if it's Marvel movies, or some people, they're at their most passionate when they're watching their kids at soccer practice, right? Their kid is running down the field, go, 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 right? So you've just got to remind yourself that you probably care about your company almost as much as you do about your kids' soccer play. Probably, really, but most of us love our kids the most, and if it was a choice between our company and our kid, we'll choose the kid, I hope, but like we always say as entrepreneurs that our businesses are like our babies, right? And I think that's almost true. It's like you care so much about your company, so you just got to remind yourself, why do I care so much? What does working on my business give me? What kind of life does it allow me to live that I wouldn't have if I was working in a corporate job? What do I get to do every day? Who do I get to help? What do I get to talk about? How much freedom do I have? How much reward do I have? How many fascinating, complex, varied problems do I get to solve? And how much status do I get to feel when I tell people that I started my own company? It can be that even. It doesn't have to be, it can just be like, I love this shit. And you just got to remember, I fucking love this shit. I love it. I love it. I love it. Find that within you. And then that will inform your passion rather than trying to put it on by using your hands and using your voice in a certain way. You want it to come from inside, which just takes reminding yourself, like, even though I'm tired and hungry and I'm exhausted, I didn't get a good night's sleep, and I've had 3 rejections from customers today, and I feel like shit, and I just want to turn off my laptop and go drink a beer and watch Netflix. I love this, and I wouldn't want to do any other job. So find that passion, remind myself of it, and then allow that to inform my passion, whether I'm talking to a customer, whether I'm trying to hire someone, whether I'm on a podcast, whatever it is. Find your why, remember your why, and let it make you passionate.
Okay, that's awesome. So you've mentioned CBT, you mentioned story writing, telling, and all that. Now my question is, okay, how much actual writing plays a role in getting all of this right?
I think writing is so important. And we're coming to a point with AI where people are starting to outsource their writing. I think this is one of the worst things you can do as an entrepreneur, is to use AI to write for you. Some people are going to say, oh, well, you can use it to come up with ideas, or you can use it to do an outline and then you can edit it. Be really careful about this. Your brain, when you are thinking of what words to put on the page to make another human being understand your value and your ideas, do not outsource that to a machine. That's your work. That's your fucking job. If you outsource that to a machine, you're stealing the struggle from yourself to come up with the perfect words. That's not easy. That's hard. It takes a lot of time. There's a guy I follow on LinkedIn who is a writer, and he was pitching this AI writing tool to his audience. He wrote a post about it. And part of his pitch was, I struggled as a writer for 8 years. I would have saved so much time and stress if I had a tool like this. It's like, but then now you wouldn't be a good writer. You struggled and now you're a good writer. That's why, because you struggled for 8 years. Everybody wants the quick solution. Everybody wants the quick fix. Everybody wants to produce more. It's about the struggle, especially when it comes to storytelling and writing and communication. You have to struggle. Otherwise, you don't build up the skills and the muscles. So I really would say to anyone, do not use ChatGPT unless you can identify that it's a really useless task for you. Great, automate everything useless. Automate everything that really you don't need. But when it comes to writing, write it yourself. Come up with the ideas yourself. Don't even use it for outlines. Don't even use it for ideas. Why? You want to think of the words yourself. I was on a call the other day with a coach, and we were trying to come up with this title for this YouTube series. And we're just like, we'll just use ChatGPT. And I came up with a title first, and we're like, yeah, that's okay. ChatGPT. We typed it in, and it was 10 ideas, and they were all bullshit. They all sucked. And then I was like, let's go back to the original. First of all, the original one's way better, but let's workshop it. And we spent 30 seconds just, how about this? Talking tips, speaking skills. We just did that, and then we came up with one. And that exercise is important. What sounds good? What might people resonate with? What might people think of? That work is so important. And I really worry that entrepreneurs are going to just completely give that to ChatGPT and other AIs. And the way to practice this every day is to write and either do it on Twitter or LinkedIn, and write a small short post on LinkedIn or Twitter or both, whatever you like. I use LinkedIn. I am not on Twitter, but I love LinkedIn. I get so much business from there. And start to get your thoughts down and share them with the world. And as you do that, you get better and shorter and clearer and cleaner. And the distance between what's in your mind and what other people are interpreting gets shorter and shorter and shorter. And you will become so much more articulate about your customers' problems, about your company, what it does, why you care, why other people should care. And that's all so good. So I think writing, I write on LinkedIn every day because I know that it brings in business, so I can justify the time for myself. If you're just starting out, I say once a week. Give yourself an hour, 2 hours, once a week where you say, I'm going to write my LinkedIn post for the week, and just start to talk about your customers' problems. 3 things they could be doing better, 5 mistakes to avoid, or a time where you solved a customer's problem, or one common error that a lot of people in your industry are making. All these articles we see all the time. Just start to copy some of them in terms of the ideas or the format. And then you'll just find yourself becoming more and more and more articulate, eloquent, and confident. And then, of course, you get business, and you get investors, and you get founders, you get people who want to join your movement just by sharing stuff online. It's not going to happen at first, but the more you build, it just starts to compound.
So when it comes to LinkedIn writing, does LinkedIn like original writing, or is it becoming a selfie too? I think you talked about it.
Yeah. I think LinkedIn likes selfies and writing, from what I can see. LinkedIn, I'm not an algorithm expert at all, but from what I can see and heard algorithm experts post about or talk about, the selfie has a couple of algorithmic benefits, but I think the selfies also just humanize you for your audience. A lot of people feel embarrassed and they think, why am I posting a selfie? It doesn't make any sense. But it helps people see your face more often. And see somebody's face more often, you feel like you know them. And that's a good thing. Then the writing is important. It's, will people stay on reading your post and stay spending time scrolling down on your post? And then, of course, will they like it? Will they comment? Will they share it? Will they, LinkedIn is counting all those actions. So the writing is really important. If you have a cute selfie, but the caption is not interesting, people might just hit like, or they might even comment, "Aw, cute selfie," whatever, right? But that post is still not going to do very well, or as well as it could, because the time spent scrolling down the post is very important to LinkedIn. So it's not just about selfies; it's about writing good, clear, helpful, interesting content. Now, there's a lot of boring or stupid content that gets a lot of likes. There's many reasons for that, but I think you should just really focus on, who are you? Why do you do what you do? How do you help people? Give away information for free. Give away your tips. Give away your frameworks. Give away your strategies. People will still pay you to work with you. People will still buy your products, even if you're giving away secrets. So yeah, just share generously, share often, and write as much as you can. And LinkedIn, I think, will reward you for it. It's done it for me, and I'm not even a smart algorithm hacker. I don't do a lot of carousels because I don't have the time, and I'm not a good designer. But I just write, and occasionally I post videos and pictures of myself, and it works.
So to be honest with you, I truly loved our conversation. I could have just continued for another hour. So I guess, but we're closing. We should close now. So where can people find you?
LinkedIn is the best because that's where I'm most active. I try to respond to all the comments and the DMs as much as possible. I'm small. I have a small enough follower count that I can still do that, which is nice. So I still try. I mean, obviously sometimes things get buried, but I try to be as responsive as possible in the DMs. If somebody wants to work with me, if somebody wants to ask me even a question, I like to be also generous. Like, I have freebies that I give away sometimes. Like, I have a free public speaking resource that I give away of all these YouTube videos you can watch. I have a B2B sales kind of playbook that I've given out a couple times. So yeah, just follow me on LinkedIn, and then if you feel like it, message me there. And if you really want to work with me as a coach, I have a one-on-one button on my LinkedIn that says book a call with me, and we can have a 15-minute conversation and see how I can help.
Okay, awesome. So William, I truly enjoyed it. So we'll stay in touch.
Fantastic, Saad. Thanks for having me. It's really nice talking to you.
Yeah. Same here. Same here. Have a lovely day. Okay. Take care.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
you too. Bye.